ultimately, I was spending about $4,000 a month for 9 months and got nothing.
That's the thing. You look at ads that come from, like, it's very clear when they come from agencies, because you see these, these recycled, stock photos that are either from Adobe, ones that they bought licenses for. It's a technician, wearing blue overalls, installing a camera with a hammer.
We're in a small industry. I have a pretty decent following on LinkedIn. And I get over 1 million impressions on my content every year on LinkedIn.
There's so many creative ways and so many things you can do. And you can do it all with a cell phone. I mean, I started with a cell phone. Now I have professional photography equipment, things like that. There's so much potential with it. It's insane.
All right. Well, welcome to Coffee Break with Jake. So excited to have you all here. For those of you that are first-time callers, listeners, I want to let you know that we have this call every Friday at 11 a.m. The purpose of the call is to bring together security professionals from all over the country and sometimes all over the world to discuss challenges, best practices, opportunities. Because what I've found is that the best things that I know, I've learned from other people. And so selfishly, I bring together lots of folks to steal all the information that they have inside their heads. I've found that that's a very helpful way for me to continue to grow in business. I also am excited to welcome to the call today, Vinny Peone. Vinny is joining us. He has been on the call before, but we've got some really exciting news from Vinny. I'm going to let you introduce yourself in just a second, Vinny, but I want to let everybody know that my goal on the call today is to talk about all of the marketing things that don't work, that dealers have wasted their money on, because I also want to talk about the things that do work. One of the biggest challenges I think that a lot of folks have is they spend money on marketing. It doesn't have any effect, no impact. And then they give up on marketing altogether. I don't want you to do that, but I definitely don't want you to waste money on things that don't work. And with that, I'd like to introduce Vinny Peone. Vinny, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
How's it going, guys? I'm Vinny. I've been coming on these calls since last summer when I was a technician. And yeah, I would actually join these calls while I was up on a ladder, doing an installation, and I would weigh in on social media marketing and advertising. I've been with Eastern Security for going on 4 years, and this week, Cooper McDonnell, the president of Eastern Security, and I launched our marketing venture called Ignite Strategic Partners. So if I don't know how many of you guys are following me on LinkedIn, Instagram, anything else, we've done quite a bit of marketing for Eastern and our sister company Intelitech over the last several months, couple years. And now we are packaging that as a service to other integrators and manufacturers across the country, specifically in security. If I ever promote a restaurant, it's just because I love eating and I love scent. But we will see.
Hey, Vinny, where are the best buffalo wings?
So my favorite ones are at the Wing Nuts in Buffalo. And I know there's other Wing Nuts, but I'm talking about Wing Nuts in Buffalo. They are my favorite ones. There's a lot of other great ones, but the best wings you're only going to find them in Buffalo, New York.
And I love it. Well, next time I come up, I want to come up there and get the best buffalo wings with you. Guys,
technically for you, Wing Nuts is right by the airport, so it couldn't be, this is our office, so it couldn't be any better.
I'll have buffalo sauce all over my shirt. You'll know I've already stopped by Wing Nuts on the way. Hey guys, Vinny jumped right into what he's doing today. And I think that it's important for you to understand how we got here today, because Vinny's being also a little bit modest about his background. He says that he started as a technician 4 years ago. Vinny, can you tell us how a technician 4 years ago is now a 2-time Sammy Award winner? 3-time Sammy Award winner. All right, so technician 4 years ago. Talk to us real quick about how you transitioned into the role of marketing with Eastern, and then what you guys got awarded those Sammy Awards for. And what a Sammy Award is for the folks that don't know.
I'll give you the whole rundown here. So I think, anyone who is on this call, I can confidently say that any of you are passionate about what you do. You're passionate. You've got passion to protect our hashtag campaign. You're passionate about your role, the security industry. So for me as a technician, I was new to the industry 4 years ago. I had a little bit of exposure, but that was really when I dove headfirst into it. I was in the trenches. I very quickly fell in love with the technology, the solution, just that relationship, with our clients, putting in systems that not only protected the people there, protected their homes, also maybe made their businesses a little bit more efficient. I loved it. And it made me want to sell it. It made me want to market this to other people and do more than just being, on one job at any given time. I wanted to bring this to everyone in Syracuse, everyone in, upstate New York. And then the more I started to, kind of be interested in that, I'm like, what, I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna get on, I didn't have any social media when I was a technician. I reactivated my LinkedIn just because that was one I already had. All I had to do was reactivate it. And I started just kind of looking around and seeing what other people in security were doing for advertising, and very quickly discovered you. I discovered, Benji with PDK, Phil Coppola with, HID. And I saw the content you guys were doing, and it didn't seem like advertisements. It was very real. It was fun. It was engaging. Your calls to action weren't just like, oh, call to learn more, call our sales team. It was, comment below with, what you think the best part of the store fail, or like something like that. It was more fun and entertaining. So I took a stab at it and started doing it myself. And I'm no stranger to being in front of a camera. I used to do this when I sold cars in a different lifetime. Um, but I started doing it more and more, started growing my own following. And as I did that, Cooper, the company president, asked if I would want to do it as the company, if I would do it as Eastern Security. Now, I was a rock star technician, so they couldn't just pull me out of the field. So I would kind of balance the two of them. 80% of the time I'm doing installations, 20% of the time I'm doing our content. And they worked hand in hand because, your technicians are in the field already. They're the ones who are putting these systems in. It takes very little effort for a technician to be able to, snap a quick before and after picture. Snap a picture of a door station that they did a great job with that hopefully has your logo on it as well. So it worked out really well for me to be able to do that in the field. And then, at the end of the day or the start of the day, bring that out into the world, turn that into, again, an advertisement that didn't necessarily feel like an advertisement.
Vinny, do you feel like Cooper found that your technical expertise and understanding and passion for the industry made you more well equipped to manage those social media accounts for the company as compared to maybe like a marketing agency that doesn't understand the business?
Absolutely, I do, because and that's the thing. You look at ads that come from, like, it's very clear when they come from agencies, because you see these, these recycled, stock photos that are either from Adobe, ones that they bought licenses for. It's a technician, wearing blue overalls, installing a camera with a hammer, as you mentioned in your post yesterday, and like it's bad. You see a lot of these companies too. They're multi-billion-dollar companies, and they're using ads where a guy's installing a bullet camera that's 20 years too old. And the problem is that they don't understand the technology. And I can't fault them for it because the technology changes. It's changing every day. But I mean, let alone these photos they're using it from 20 years ago.
So, so you had a passion for the industry. You had a technical understanding. You were also in the field, so you had access to like really great content right there, hands-on in the field. Talk to us about how you shifted from 20% marketing and 80% technician to a higher percentage of marketing, which ultimately again led to 3 Sammy Awards. Can you talk to us about that transition?
I think a lot of it was, obviously Cooper, having a great leader here who empowered me to really run with this. But, the more our brand really started to grow, and, people will be telling him, just out in the world, like, oh, yeah, I see you guys online all the time. And, we started to get sales from, a lot of the ads, again, ads that I was putting out, but they were just simple posts. The more that started to grow, the more he started to realize my value. I had a higher value in a marketing role for the entire company versus having me, on maybe one job site for, 2 to 3 weeks at a time. And again, the more we took that off, the more he realized like, hey, our sister company Intelitech, they could use a Vinny on their team. And for us, it's perfect 'cause they're also in New York, so I go back and forth between the two. Um, But yeah, that's really the value once that was started to be very clear that it was there, and the name recognition and the sales from it, that's really when that started to shift more to 50-50, and then again, full-time marketing now. And the only other thing I really do right now, yeah, I do sales every now and then. Of course, when you're in the field for as long as I was, you start to get calls from clients, and they still know me on a first name basis. I'm always happy to help them out. But I guess as a marketer, it's, when I meet with people, I'm trying to get reviews. I'm trying to actually catalog these installations. So there's still a value to having that as a kind of a hybrid element of it.
So I just want to give context here. The Sammy Awards they're awarded by SDM Magazine, correct? I'm sorry, Security Sales and Integration does the Sammy Awards, and these awards recognize some of the top companies in the industry for the most innovative marketing campaigns. I just want to give context to this. Vinny, who had started as a technician with Eastern, grew in a marketing role within Eastern and was effectively competing with companies that have huge marketing budgets and incredible resources for marketing, was still able to take home now 3 of those awards. Real quick, Vinny, because I want to jump into some of the conversation here. What were the 3 Sammy Awards that you guys won?
So the very first one was best social media campaign, which we edged out Everon on that one, which was a pretty big accomplishment for us.
Huge.
That really got me fired up. But the campaign was on work from home alarm monitoring, and we did probably 10 to 12 videos, kind of detailing the risks of it, and they were funny videos. But again, no budget, just me and my friends and family as voice actors. That was the first one in 2024. This year at ISC West, we were awarded best promotional giveaway item for our Yeti giveaway, which every year we've been giving away a Yeti Tundra 45 cooler. But they even specifically said it wasn't just about the dollar amount of the giveaway, which ordinarily would have won anyway, as much as the marketing campaign around it, because it was all viral memes and videos we were putting out like every few days that really that one stand out. And then the big one here too was for Intelitech, and they're kind of in tiers, and the top Sammy Award is for integrated installation of the year, which all I can take credit for on that one is cataloging it and putting it into writing. But the team at Intelitech was really, all I'm doing is telling their story. They're the ones who executed that installation, and honestly, they could have won that any given year. It takes somebody to actually put it into writing and to document these things.
You know what, Vinny? I think you nailed it right there. Is that anybody could get recognition if they had somebody that understood their business and could tell their story. This is something that I talk about a lot. And so we talk about, number one, you were able to understand the project and tell the story of that project and get awarded the Sammy for, the best installation. But everything else that you do in terms of marketing is very much storytelling based. I could tell you that my marketing strategy is very unpolished. It's really just about telling our story and telling the story of our partners. And we have seen time and time again people that are able to competently or just authentically share their stories, like you shared about central station monitoring from home, right? And in kind of a funny way that people could appreciate and relate to and be amused by. And I can tell you, I got screenshots of your messages from people in the industry, and they're like, "Can you believe this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can. I think it's pretty creative stuff." So it gets attention. I love that, and I think that one of the coolest things about number one, applying for a Sammy Award, um, for posting these things on social media doesn't cost you anything. Like, we're going to talk about today, and this is what I want to get into. If anybody's ever spent money on marketing and you feel like you could have just lit your money on fire, would you just raise your hand for me? If you've ever just spent money on marketing and realized, hey, that was a waste of money, even if like you were confident about it, even if you were promised the world about it. Look, we've got 14, 15 people here raising their hand. Keep your hands up if you would, if you're willing to just kind of share a few notes on that with me. Um, But I think unfortunately we see this happen all too often. I'm going to call on John with Connect Smart. John, can you tell us, and don't do me a favor, if there's a specific company, let's leave that off of the call. But I want to understand the concept, what the campaign was, and how you feel like maybe you just lit your money on fire.
Oh, that's easy. It was print media and in a local magazine that gets placed in probably 150, 200 locations, and with the hopes that there would be visibility there, and that was kind of the goal, was just to get brand visibility. Um, and I think it was a fail. I don't really have a way to measure how many people would have actually picked up the magazine, looked at it. So I didn't have, I guess, the best plan going in, and that's probably part of it. I'm a lot more refined today, but that was an early fail, and it taught me to dig a little deeper as far as defining my avatar and then gearing all of my marketing to that, finding out where they would be, where they spend their money, and that's become my primary marketing focus.
First of all, thank you for sharing that story. I have heard that story at least 100 times from dealers that I've talked to that have been pitched. It's tough because as a locally owned business, you want to be involved in the community. You want to support local businesses. You want to support local publications. But also as a business owner, you're looking to figure out how you can spend your marketing dollars to get the best return on investment. You mentioned something specifically. You said that you couldn't measure the results of it. For the folks that are on the call that are looking at their marketing budget and trying to understand where to spend the money, um, for the first big chunk of your marketing budget, I would say you absolutely want to make sure there's some way to measure results, that there's some metrics, something that you're measuring. It doesn't have to be necessarily how many deals come from this. It could be some other measurements, maybe impressions, maybe interactions. Vinny, can you speak to kind of as you're looking at some of these campaigns, what metrics you're looking at to kind of gauge effectiveness of, and it's not always money, guys. Sometimes it's just time and effort put into these things. So, which, is, it does translate to money, but talk to me about how you might measure some of these marketing campaigns.
I mean, so right out of the gate, anytime you're investing in print media, you have to take into consideration too. I think it's maybe 12% of consumers approximately will cite that a print ad was what they base their purchasing decision off of, whereas 92% of them will say that it was that they checked Google reviews, Yelp reviews, whatever. A print ad, realistically, you're probably not going to get, a direct sale from, as much as hope that they'll call to learn more, or that they'll go to your website. And in 2025, I would say it needs to be linking to your website somehow, whether it's a QR code or you have the link for it. They're probably QR, depending on the publication. And honestly, depending on the QR tech you're using, a lot of this is trackable as well. But at bare minimum on your website, you need to have something on your main lead generator form where it's name, phone, email, and how did you hear about us. And you also need to have some kind of analytics software built into, like, the something that's on every page, like your header is typically where it would go, just so you know how you're getting your traffic. And these are all very easy things to set up, like modifying your form, getting the analytics software for there. That could be done, relatively quickly. And then just kind of staying on top of that, knowing, kind of what you're putting your time into, how it's working, because you can see if you're getting clicks from social media, if you're getting it from, search engines. And, that right off the bat is kind of bare minimum for tracking, your results from these things. And in addition to that, and it's kind of a big investment right out of the gate, but having a good CRM, I would say, something that's scalable to your business. And, HubSpot is something that, I've heard a lot of good reviews on. You can kind of integrate your, any kind of leads into that and be able to track, how you got them. There's a lot of benefits to having a CRM, or at least depending on the size of your business, just something to kind of keep track of these things. But always, always, always be asking, how did you hear about us? Whether on the website, if you've got a receptionist, somebody answering the phone, that should be, before they get off the phone, how did you hear about us?
Hey, so I'm curious, John, real quick, if I can ask you, do you know what the total circulation was on that print? Roughly what the circulation might have been?
Um, I know that they deliver on average 50 magazines to 150 to 200 locations. So I mean that was, and then they also uh they mail out to a demographic that's over 100 grand income earner.
Cool. No, that's
It-
great. And
yeah, this was also 10 years ago too. So I know, understand that the landscape, has actually changed, and my understanding has significantly changed in that we're always trying to hit a moving target. And I'm sure Vinny understands that better than anybody, being that he's kind of immersed himself in it and always chasing the algorithm, or you know, uh, or some other trend. You want to be in that. I mean, there's some people out there changing their business hours to being 24-hour businesses so that they can try to pop above the people that have fixed times.
yeah, I would point out here too, guys, for those of you that are in the alarm business, if there's somebody that'll answer your phone 24 hours a day, you are a 24/7 business. You're monitoring 24/7. And so, I think that there's some real good sense in considering 24/7 hours on there, so long as there's somebody that they're going to reach when they call that phone number. Thanks so much for sharing, John. I want to jump to Anthony Fermani. And I'm sorry, guys, I'm going out of order a little bit here. Anthony, would you be willing to share kind of a scenario of kind of lighting money on fire?
Yeah, I know I've mentioned it on here tomorrow, in the past, but I hired I was kind of spinning my wheels with marketing. I didn't know which way to go, and I hired a company that specializes in this industry. I won't name them. Um, Very nice people, but they promised a lot, and ultimately, um, I was spending about $4,000 a month for 9 months and got nothing. Not a lead, not a phone call. Anybody who calls or reaches out, I always say, "Hey, how did you hear of us?" Usually it's a referral, and I kept talking to them about it, and they just kept saying, "Well, we're gonna try this, we're gonna try that." Um, and just nothing worked, and I felt like the communication was bad.
Anthony, I want to say I'm sorry, number one, for that happening. I also want to say I'm sorry to bring it up again, but you raised your hand, so it was fair game. But I really, because I knew of your story, I really wanted you to share it because I think that this is something that I hear too often as well. And I mentioned, I think in the email, some of the messaging that you'll receive from marketing companies to kind of keep you paying that monthly. Um, when they start saying things like, well, it's a long-term play, right? Like
Yep.
this is something that takes time. All of that is true. Building your brand, your reputation, all of that does take time. Um, but I would say that whenever you're evaluating working with a company, setting those expectations and deliverables in advance, right? And saying, hey, look, like, here's my goal. I want to work with you. I want to do these things. And if it is based on revenue generated, make sure there's some way to measure that. If it is based on, hey, I just want to build my brand and my reputation, and I want to make sure that, we're growing our followers on social media, we're getting more impressions on our content, set those expectations and those measurements in advance. Because all too often, I hear, honestly, Anthony, that scenario it plays out with so many companies. The marketing company signs them up, they're paying a retainer, and then unfortunately for a company that didn't have $4,000 to spend on just you could spend $4,000 a month, but for $4,000 a month, you want to see something tangible come from that. Other companies that at a larger scale, they may gladly spend $4,000 a month on some kind of marketing, brand building stuff that they, they can tell themselves, hey, that's just kind of building our reputation in the local market. But I think for a lot of the folks on the call, for $4,000 a month, you want to see measurable, tangible results. Curious, for $4,000 a month, what would you like to have seen?
So that's a good question. Because I had never marketed before, I didn't know. Obviously, I would have expected to make more money, but I didn't know if what was better, more followers on social media, more inquiries. You know, I basically wanted to see a substantial increase in business. But as things were going, I know it's the long game, you know. Um, but I thought to myself, hey, if this can bring in $3,000 a month, maybe in revenue, I'll let it go for a little bit longer. And if it starts showing $3,000 in profit, I'll let it keep going even more. And then, I finally told them if I break even on this, I will continue it because I know I'm breaking even. I know it's the long game. Maybe it'll just get better and better. But none of that happened. And I will say they weren't charging me 4,000. I believe, if I remember correctly, it was 2,500 and then 1,500 was Google budget, AdWords budget. But it was exactly what you said. They should be keeping you in the loop. I started saying like, "Hey, I'm sounding the alarm here, guys. What are we doing?" So they agreed to have like a monthly web meeting with me and their team. And they always promised this and that and said they're going to start sending me weekly statistics, um, whatever data they can gather, I guess. And I never got a report. And I would ask about the report. Sometimes I would get it. Most of the time I wouldn't. And it was just, it literally was like I was lighting the money on fire.
How long did this go on?
Just over not almost 10 months.
Okay. Ouch. That's again, just that's $36,000 for those of you on the call. We spend money on things sometimes where it's hard to, even in my business as a distributor, we spend money on things that it's hard to sometimes attribute the revenue from that thing. But we do, just to give you guys some ideas here, we do create these projects in our accounting software that allows us to associate expenses with a campaign. And then we're able to look at, let's say, for example, that we participate in a trade show. We can have all the expenses associated with that trade show, and we can tag the customers that we might have met with at that trade show, customers or prospects, and we can look at it over time. I'm be dishonest if I told you we do an awesome job at it, but we do an okay job at it. And it really is important to kind of understand, hey, even if it's hard to attribute, I think it's important to make an effort to see, hey, what can I measure here in terms of cost, and what can I measure here in terms of revenue, so that I can get an understanding of, does this make sense? And maybe it's worth an experiment the first time. Maybe John does a magazine print the first time, and he has a kind of discretionary budget of marketing funds that he experiments with. But it's not the core of his marketing budget, right? I think it's a great idea. To light money on fire from time to time, to be ready to light money on fire from time to time, trying things. Because if you don't, you never know, like, hey, could that have worked, right? So like, there's absolutely no shame in trying something and it not working. The key thing is, like, in Anthony's case, now Anthony knows, hey, if I'm going to engage a marketing agency, here's what we're going to do. We're going to set expectations. I'm going to hold them to their deliverables. As soon as they kind of fail to meet those deliverables repeatedly, I'm going to cut ties, right? That's just part of it, right? Like, there is some experimentation that's involved in the marketing. I'm going to go real quick I'm going to go to Kelly. Kelly, where you calling in from? And tell us how you burned through some money on marketing that didn't work.
Good morning. Um, it's really not even a one-time thing that has happened. It is different times over the years where, you do a campaign and I think, the old adage is it's not like a faucet. You can't just turn it off and on and expect it to work. So in my mind, I always want to commit, to a little bit of time, and hoping that you get the return from it. And a lot of, I think, what I have experienced over many years, not just what I'm doing today, but is what somebody else said, hoping that you're going to get traction so people will remember you or they'll remember seeing your ad or getting, your newsletter or whatever. But, there certainly have been campaigns where we've spent some money and you're hoping for returns because you spent a lot of money and they're not super measurable at the end of the day. I couldn't go back and track it and say, all right, well, we got this many leads from that particular campaign. And that's always been a challenge because especially being, having my own business, with my partners and we want to understand how every dollar is being spent. So, the one thing I would say is I have to let go of some of that immediate return expectation and keep that drip going and so that our name is always out there because just like, everybody on here, I'm in a business where I need people to remember what we do. And so what I do try to do is in the e-blast that we do, and we do a weekly newsletter. I try to make sure there's some content in it that is useful and it's a little bit different every week, which is sometimes challenging, but I would say, my biggest pain point though really has been kind of like everybody, you spend a lot of money on a campaign and you have some return expectations and you can't track it. And I would actually I've got a question that I would throw out to anyone because the one thing that you can kind of measure, hopefully, are open rates and click through rates.
Sure.
And I think the click through, based on what I'm sending on my newsletters, there's not necessarily a need for a click through, although we do have a call to action for people to join our buyers database. But outside of that, there's not really a need to click through because what the information that we're sharing is in the newsletter. But I would love to hear from others, what is your expectation and what is considered to be a successful campaign based on click-through percentages or just open rates? I would love to hear just the general idea from people because I ask myself this almost every week when I see what those numbers are.
Yeah, so I'd like to speak to that a little bit. We do a fair amount of email marketing to our list of customers and prospects. Um, I would encourage you to have a reason to click through on your email, even if it's something as simple as, in your case, Kelly, they might be able to download your latest listings, your anonymized listings of businesses that they might be looking to kind of download the latest report. But what we found is that by having something for them to click through to, um, that gives our salespeople insights into who's actually like some people. I'll read anything you send me, Kelly. You send me an email, I'm going to read it, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean, like I'm a prospect or a qualified prospect or that I have intent to engage your services. And so for everybody on here, I would encourage you to have some reason for a click through. I'd also encourage you, a lot of folks spend a lot of time on email marketing. I've got Tyler on the call here. He's muted. I don't know if he can chime in on this, but we have really shifted so much to plain text emails. I think that there is a real blindness now to some of the email marketing that we get from companies. that we have shifted almost exclusively to personalized plain text emails. So it might say something like, Kelly, is everything okay? Right? And then you open the email and it might be a message from me and it's like, Kelly, I noticed it's been a few months since you placed an order. Did we screw something up? Question mark. That's the whole email, right? And it's not that doesn't have a click through, but we might see a reply rate that's through the roof. And it might be like, hey, yeah, you guys are the worst distributor. I switched back to ADI and Wesco because they're so much better than you. Thankfully, we don't get those messages, but we do get, important messages, which could be something like, hey, you know what? Business has slowed down for me, or I've switched to another product, or hey, we really like you guys, but we need this and we don't think that you have that. Now we can respond and we have it. And so I would just say click through rate and open rate. It's going to vary depending on the list. So that's a big thing. Vinny, do you have any insights or anything that you might want to add on click through rate or open rate or just strategy overall with email?
I mean, I would agree with every point you made as well as Tyler that a lot of times the analytics get skewed here. But if this is a service you're paying for, just being sure there's transparency and that you have access to these analytics if you're, using a third party for it. Because, just in my capacity at Eastern, I get all the time, I've got different companies reaching out asking if we want to be on their email list. And then once I start actually, and they tell me about these crazy subscriber bases they have, millions of people will see this. And I ask them, but okay, what are the analytics of it? Give me these rates, and they're hesitant to provide them. And then when I finally, they do, it's kind of unimpressive, and turns out it's not really worth our time. But just transparency in the analytics, and if you're doing it yourself, just again, Kelly, like you said, making sure that you've got content that people do want to actually click through and engage with and learn more. I mean, the quality of the content will always be kind of the key point there.
Well, and also, just because I'm a big believer in the value of in-person and virtual networking, and I realize that so many times we have an opportunity to tell people about ourselves without spending any money. Kelly, real quick, tell us what you do.
The quickest way to say it is I am a business broker in the security industry. I typically represent sellers. I work with a very long and daily cold list of buyers. And here's my call to action. If you're a buyer and you want to be added to our buyer database, you can reach out to me and we will add you. And if you're a seller and you just want to understand what that could look like for you, we can have a confidential conversation, non-committal, just to kind of look at what your future could look like. So thanks, Jake. Thanks for letting
You
me
bet.
plug right there.
You bet. And then the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get your buyer seller checklist behind a form on a landing page, so we can send a link to everybody. And in order
Oh,
to get your
I'm gonna dig
checklist,
you the link. I'm putting
yeah,
the link in the chat room right now.
perfect, perfect, good, good, good. Well, thanks so much for jumping on. Vinny, one of the things I wanted to talk about on the call was things that do work. We've had some examples here of some challenges. Just to kind of recap, we've talked about print media. We've talked about working with an agency that, really struggled to provide at least measurable ROI, or even just basic data on the stats of their campaigns. I think there's also some other ones that I've heard recently that I want to share with the group, and I hope I check a lot of the boxes here. Um, One of them was radio advertising. I had a small dealer that was spent money on radio advertising. Now, the largest company here one of the largest companies, I think they're the largest company in Florida, for years spent a ton of money on radio advertising. And I do believe that it was effective because they were so huge and they had such a big marketing budget. And there was so much brand awareness around, and John will know the guys that, everybody hates Safe Touch, right? We all heard those commercials on the radio. And for them, I think that that was a part of their marketing budget and an effective way to kind of reinforce their brand. For a company starting out, you don't have the funds to spend on radio advertising. Like please do not spend money on radio advertising. I'm going to say that again, please, unless you have spent all of your marketing money on other things with a measurable ROI, unless you've, absolutely optimized everything, please do not spend money on radio advertising. Now, we had another really large sizable company on the call recently, and they are scaled, they have market saturation, and they had spent some money on billboards, and they got some really, for them, they were able to measure the results of the billboards, but they were huge. I'm going to caution you, unless you've spent lots and lots of money on marketing already this month, don't do billboard advertising. It's very, very hard. It's a big investment. Um, but if you are scaled, and if you have spent money on all kinds of other things and you want to look at billboard advertising, one of the things that this gentleman actually recommended was getting in touch with the rep and having them let you know when there was a last minute opening and negotiating very discounted deals on those billboards so they can reuse those. Apparently, they can reuse the billboard stuff over and over again. I want to caution, for most of the folks on the call, billboards is just not a really good advertising thing. I also want to say this: some of you are getting pitched by SEO companies that are scammers. Please stop spending lots of money with scam SEO companies. Unless they can deliver to you results and show you, hey, here's how we've helped this particular company, and then do the same for you after they start working with you. Do not spend money with SEO companies. You really, really, it's one of those things where, again, they're going to tell you it's a long-term play. There are some folks that do a good job of it. I just had a conversation with a friend of mine who's spending, I don't know, I want to say it was like $1,500 a month, and he's seen a noticeable uptick in the amount of leads and inquiries they're getting on their site. So it can be done, and it can be done correctly. All right. So now, Vinny, I think I've covered a lot of the things that don't work. If there's any other marketing strategies or campaigns where you've burned money on and you feel like nobody should do it, throw it into the chat for me, because we can't get to all of them on here. Now, Vinny, tell me what works. What has been effective for you? What have you seen has been an effective strategy for Eastern Security and Teletech?
This is gonna be a crazy one here. Not a lot of people have thought of, and it's simple. It's 2 words: social media. You got to meet your.
I don't know. I think that social media stuff is a scam. I don't think anybody should invest any time on social media.
You got to meet your end users where they are and walk around a grocery store, anywhere right now, a library. People are walking around glued to their phones, and that is only going to, I say get worse. Realistically, I mean, for us, that's a good thing because they're walking around with something that is designed to advertise to them. Like, the people they are asking to be advertised to, walking around on their phones 24/7, and I'm guilty of it as well. And the stuff that I get targeted campaigns for is crazy. But no, it's the great thing about social media. You get what you put into it. I mean, you can go entirely organic growth on there. And if you have good content, quality content, which again, it's time consuming. It takes a while to really figure out your voice, your story, your audience, how to, relay that to them in a way that can grow your brand and drive sales. But beyond that, you can put paid campaigns out there similar to Google. I noticed, a Google ad campaign really can, you could burn through dollars a lot quicker than on Meta or LinkedIn. But again, it takes constant management of these things right out of the gate, just starting out, just focus on organic growth. Just get your name out there. Start to try to, get your local community, the people who are actually using your services involved. And that is where a lot of advertising agencies fall short is they're not researching your local community. They don't know your clients. They don't know your team. They don't know the organizations you're part of. They're just casting out these wide nets and hoping to get a bite on them. But realistically, for Eastern Security and for Intelitech, the most success we have had is when we get people in our local community and our actual clients and team involved with it. And, what we're looking at with Ignite, we're not looking at just selling, just be like, yep, $5,000 a month for marketing services. We're looking at integrating fully with your team. And I think that's realistically, if you don't have someone on your team already, that's the next best thing is to have a company that's willing to actually integrate with your team, who's willing to be in your sales meetings, your strategy meetings. And Anthony F., I'm not sure if you're still on the call, but I want you to know that you were my original inspiration for this last year when you told this story. And, I remember talking to Cooper and talking about, how, a lot of security integrators and manufacturers, they're not getting their money's worth with these third parties, whether it's a third party that's claims to be, security based or not, that there is a void for this service. And that was what it's inspired Ignite.
Yeah, I think, Vinny, when you talk about what you're doing, when you talk about what you've done, I see how you've leveraged social media, and I think that it's, uh, Gary Vaynerchuk refers to it as underpriced attention, right? Like you are able to get eyes on you, for almost nothing in terms of investment and money to put it on those platforms. Maybe you pay somebody to help you with that, right? But I think about, even just my LinkedIn. Um, we're in a small industry. I have a pretty decent following on LinkedIn. And I get over 1 million impressions on my content every year on LinkedIn. And I think to myself, hey, that doesn't cost me anything, right? Like that's me spending some time mostly writing. I like to write content and like to tell my story in written form on LinkedIn. But I've really been impressed with some of the creative ways that you've used video and images. And when we talk about images, they're not just stock images, right? Because you see somebody installing a camera with a hammer. I don't know that you call that guy to install a camera at your house, but can you talk to me about how much is involved in collecting some of that um, real content, those real pictures? What's your strategy? Like, how have you kind of coached some of the folks that work remotely? How have you personally kind of tried to get some of that content? What's your strategy on collecting content that you can use in that social media marketing?
Honestly, my background as a former technician, because I've got a great relationship with our technicians here, with the Inteltech guys. I can call any one of them at any given point and vice versa, and they will tell them exactly what I'm looking for, and they'll get it to me. And if I always tell them too, hey, if you can get me this, I'll the pizza delivered to the job site for you today. Little stuff like that, and like on realistically, the value you're getting from raw content in the field is worth a pizza every day if you could keep that going. But the thing is, a lot being a technician is the hardest job in the security industry, hands down. So you have to have a good relationship with these guys, and there's no advertising agency that's going to talk to your technicians and do this with you. It's something that has to be trained. It's a relationship that has to be built and a respect that has to be earned. And I think that's made a huge difference as well.
After some initial hazing.
Exactly.
Yeah. You earned your stripes. You earned your
And just
stripes.
relationships with the end users and leveraging those. And the salespeople are the next best weapon there, because they have built relationships with with their clients and with the end users. And to have them be able to reach out and be like, hey, the marketing team wants to do a piece, on access control and healthcare. Do you think we could come by, do quick shots of, in, authorized areas, of course, and do a quick video interview with you? And most of them are fine with it. And if you have to offer, hey, we'll do your next, month of monitoring free. Like something. Again, that is significantly cheaper than what you would spend, on ad spend. And, again, it's raw, engaging content, but again, it is time consuming. And it's, having somebody to shoot the content. And that's why, we're not just saying, hey, this is what you need to do, go do it. We're also in several packages. I mean, we're offering travel, full videography, and everything, kind of the works to make this happen.
That's awesome. And so Tyler Buchanan, did you want to add something on collecting content?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, I just want to echo a lot of the things that Vinny are saying. So we, not to pitch or anything, say what I do, but I do marketing as well, and I do quietly in the background. I market for dealers. It's a service that we offer, but um, that's the biggest thing is, I've heard all of the stories about, like, I actually had a guy call me and he was like, I've got customers that are mad because this marketing agency posted a picture of stock photo and there was a tablet on the wall. They wanted the tablet. They couldn't get the tablet because that tablet is not a security panel. Like it was just an iPad. But yeah, taking photos of your people, your products, your vans, the transparency of social media. And then, you can have fun with it. There's, like one of the big ones going around right now is it's like people ask me, Bob, how do I wash this car? Well, my name's not Bob and I don't wash cars, but I'm a technician, things like that, just to get attention. There's so many creative ways and so many things you can do, and you can do it all with a cell phone. I mean, I started with a cell phone. Now I have professional photography equipment, things like that. That it's there's so much potential with it. It's insane.
Well, I think that's, Vinny talked about incentivizing your techs in the field with getting some of this content. I also think that incentivizing your team to collect things like testimonials from customers is a really powerful way to generate some of this content. Guys, when we talk about marketing, um, making an intentional effort to get really good content, testimonials, pictures in the field, some really great pictures of your team. I think that for the most part, people people do business with people, and people want to do business with people that they know, like, and trust. Like, given the option, hey, who am I going to do business with? They want to do business with somebody that they know and like, right? And that they trust. And leveraging some of this content creation, getting your folks to collect some of these testimonials. Be careful. I incentivized my sales guys $20 for every positive review that they got us on Google, and they got like 100 reviews in a week. And I was like, oh man, that's a $2,000 investment in reviews. But you know what? It was $2,000 well spent, right? Because now we're able to take all of those 5-star reviews and we're able to kind of rework them into templated testimonials that you'll see on our social channels. I also think that when you have folks take the time to reflect on the relationship that you have with them, and then they write out why I like doing business with this company, something happens, right? Like I think that mental exercise is actually a really important exercise. It helps them to remember, hey, I like buying from Jake because of this, that, and the other, right? I think John and Eli and Ryan and Chip, I think they're the best. And you know what? Maybe that next order, maybe that next job is going to go through them instead of somebody else. I would encourage you to be really intentional about it. But I also know this: most of the folks in the call here are super duper busy. Is there anybody on the call that has like a bunch of extra spare time on their hands? Is there anybody that just raise your hand for me if you're just swimming in extra time, you don't know what to do with yourself, and you're just trying to figure out how you can fill all this extra? I love you, Vinny. Vinny's on it. It's only Vinny. Vinny's the only guy that's got time, and that's good news because you need somebody with time to help you through some of these things, right? You want to focus on, hey, what do we do? How are we marketing our business? How are we promoting our brand? How are we managing our social channels? How are we doing it in a meaningful and authentic way? How are we sharing really great testimonials from customers? But more importantly, who's the one that's tracking that and making sure that the techs get a $20 gift card, or making sure that they have a weekly one-on-one with your team to ensure that those things are actually happening on a weekly basis? I know that if you don't make the time, it won't happen. And if you don't have the time, you can't possibly make it. All right. So, Vinny, give us the last 60-second pitch before I close out the call. You've got all the time in the world. All these folks need help with marketing and they don't have time. How can you help them?
All the time in 60 seconds. I love it. Guys, Cooper and I, we're tailoring at marketing and brand development packages specifically to any need and budget. I can understand any distrust with marketing agencies. And, I want to talk with you guys low stress chat, 30 minutes, schedule anytime. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, Facebook, email, just vinny@ignitestrategic.net. Happy to schedule a chat with you, and maybe something works out, maybe it doesn't, but we're offering everything from consulting to full-blown, we'll take the reins, we're part of your team. We're your CMO, business development director, creative designer, everything. We've got something for everyone, and we've got a bunch of appointments already coming in next week here, and I'm thrilled for the opportunity to work with more of you guys. And Jake, thank you very much for having me on again here.
Oh, of course. Now, guys, I've really enjoyed getting to know Vinny and Cooper. These guys are just they're good guys, right? And I really love what they're doing in terms of marketing. I'm excited about what it means for our dealers that aren't necessarily looking to spend thousands of dollars a month on pay-per-click. Let me tell you something. The biggest companies in the country are spending millions of dollars on pay-per-click. I don't know if that's going to work for you, right? I'd rather you spend your money working with somebody that's going to be able to help you tell your story, because I can tell you that by me, through my own personal experience telling my story, I have sold millions of dollars in product to folks that would have never even knew I existed if I didn't take the time to promote myself, my company, and to tell our story online. And I think that Vinny can help you do the same. Guys, we have this call every Friday at 11 a.m. If there's any questions, comments, anything you want to share with me after the call, feel free to email it. Just reply to the email that you got with the reminder for the call. If you have ideas for content, please send that in. If you do business with us today, I want to thank you for the opportunity to support your business. I know that many of the folks on the call, we bless and brand their products. We put their logo front and center where it belongs. If you'd like to learn more about that, please reach out to me after the call. But whether you do business with us or not, you're always welcome on this call. You're welcome in our Facebook group. You're welcome on this call. We are, and again, it's just because I want to pick your brain. So it's not me being generous with my time. It's me being selfish, wanting to pull all the great stuff that you have in your brains into mine. If you're on the call and you didn't get a chance to chime in, feel free to throw any notes in the comments on the next call. For those of you that shared your expertise, your experience, Anthony, for sharing that very painful story, I want to thank you. I think it's important to tell that story because I think people need to understand that can and does happen. But what's more exciting to me is knowing that leaving this call, you're leaving with an excellent resource, somebody that can help you and guide you through marketing your business. I hope to see all of you next week on the call. Have a great weekend and stay safe. Bye-bye.